Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, it is my honor and privilege to bring our guest on, but I always stop right here and thank them for a couple things I deem very expensive: time and their journey. Time is one of the most precious commodity offered to each and every one of us while we're here on this planet. It is given 24 hours, each one of us. I cannot say to someone that he or she has more than I. We all have the same. It is how we manage our lives, our thoughts, but it's a very expensive commodity. And I want to thank Sandy for coming and spending some of that stuff with us. The other is her journey. It housed everything that she was and made her who she is, this beautiful human spirit that is before us, to share with us her journey so that we can inquire and learn wisdom and get some insights so that we can become better human spirits as well. Sandy, thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much for having me, Ken. I'm looking forward to our conversation, actually.
It is my honor to have you here. Tell the people the things that you have given birth so far due to your journey. I know as a result of one's journey, we were pregnant with things and we give birth to things. Tell them about everything that you do right now.
What I do right now, I've certainly given birth to many things with, so much suffering in life. We often end up giving birth to things afterwards for our own, our own healing, wherever that leads us. But what I'm currently doing is, after the past few years of difficulties, I wrote a book on courage. And from that, I decided to start some circles. I call them courage circles, where we sit together. Everybody is welcome. There's absolutely no conditions of who can attend. And, the baseline of what we do there might be the most important thing, actually. The first thing we do is we introduce ourselves. And I ask everyone to say their CV, like, who are you? At least who you think you are, right? So I'll start, and I have a nice title that I can start with. So I say, yes, I'm a graduate of a very prestigious law school and blah, blah, blah. And my kids are in these schools and, stuff like that. And everybody else does the same. I'm a programmer. I'm this, I'm that. And then the first thing we do in my circle is I ask everybody to let all that go now. We're going to let go of our titles, our kids, our cats, our dogs, our everything else, and sit together as equals. And so we reintroduce ourselves. And I start with, hi, my name is Sandy. So that's the base of what I'm doing now, I guess, creating a space where there is actually very deep equality at the essential level. That's the baseline of it, but there's more to it.
It's a beautiful baseline. I think that is a great baseline to build from. When we get there, we need a foundation, and that is a powerful space to begin. How we like to do here at Threads of Enlightenment, Sandy, is go back. I believe that things happen to us when we are young that cause us to look and interpret the world from whatever trauma that entered into our life, whether it's small, major, whatever, but all trauma is major. And because it causes us to develop a perception and we live based on that perception. Our parents had it. They teach us based on their perceptions. And so we are able to assimilate a lot of information from them. And so we want to know, how was your family life like as a young girl?
I don't think I'm going to go into deep detail of all my experiences on this show, but I can say that in many respects it was wonderful, as many people can say. But many other respects, it parallels what I think occurs in almost every single family that I witness, which is that parents don't often have the listening and the acceptance styles that, I think every human being needs. So this is not a criticism of my parents. My parents certainly did their best and did many good things. But I could say that, and it's not about my parents necessarily, but I think almost all of us experience parenting where there's a lot of telling kids how to be, how to feel, what to think, instead of listening to what the experience is of the child and being accepting of that in general. So this is not really just my childhood. I think even my whole adult life and pretty much what I witness every single day of my life with everybody still parallels that. So I don't want to limit it to my experience. So I think that's
every
a
family
constant.
has that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a constant, a feeling that people have in their environment, whether it's at school or at work or with their parents, where they cannot just be. And that I think is the hardest thing to really notice and start to absolutely put boundaries on in your life and learn to exist, from a space of reality and instead of what everybody is telling you you should be or say or think or feel. Right. So
I agree with you. The as you were talking about your family, because we all have it in everyone's family, and how did you relate to outsiders outside of your family as you were growing as a young girl? What was your relation like to others? Let's say those that were in school, if you will. How did you relate to them in your behavior, mindset, conversation, stuff like that?
I think, we're all put into certain groups, right? When we're raised, we're put into groups, whether it's races or religions or countries or whatever else. So, I was definitely, placed in certain groups and taught, the mindset of the certain group. But I think even from very, very young, I remember having lots of doubts on, not agreeing with what I'm hearing. I wasn't necessarily able to voice it or have anyone that understood my ways, whether it was at school. But actually from a very young age, I remember, having a sense of equality among humans that I don't think I was seeing anywhere in my environment.
Yeah, those. I think I've interviewed thousands of people, and the theme or the thread that we have, or that I see that is very common, is that everyone at a young age begins to question. The questioning starts very young. Of course, you're not able to understand all of them. But you know that there's something there that is causing you this uneasiness, and you are not satisfied with the programming that you are being told that ways you should be, speak, act, and all of type stuff. And so I see that common thread amongst all of those who are later are touched, if you will, and start their personal journey of finding out for themselves what was it? What are those answers to those questions that they carried? So here you are. You began to notice and be early on in your life. You have this state of mind where you are not. You're not trusting of all the things and the way they're telling you ought to act and behave and think. So as this girl is moving through her life, and you are looking into to the college arena, you're this young woman. What made you pick the field that you picked, and what was that mindset that drove you there?
I had a lot of openness in my first degree of university. I did political science. So I was just taking courses and everything just out of interest, which I think is really unfortunate that people don't do anymore. They kind of choose a field and they don't get this wider open experience. So I would take everything. I would take I want to learn a bit about philosophy and management, whatever I felt like doing. There was a lot of space for electives. So I did political science. And I don't know, how absolutely determined I was to go to law school, but I guess my grades were very high and it looked like, oh, that sounds interesting. And so I followed that and did that. And but I wouldn't say that's the very defining part of who I am, or even my law degrees or anything like that. I wouldn't say that's the big definer of who I am. A bigger definer would be, how, I've had so much adversity, like so much, like many other people. I'm just speaking for myself, but just so much and so constant. And then somehow I always found my way. I mean, I think that, through just looking for it, looking within myself mostly. And there was a deep trust that I could do it, I could find it, it's in there, So that's something that has always, every time I would get deep, I would get back out and things like that. So this is not the first time I would be doing a project out of suffering, but it is the first time that I really decided I'm ready to really share this latest project with the world, because I feel obligated to internally, not by any other thing, that my internal guidance tells me that at this point in my life, I should be speaking. And that's why I started speaking. Yeah.
That is awesome. I don't think your education defines you. It's just some place we find ourselves. And it's very interesting to find out the process. How did we get there? Because sometimes it's really interesting how life has a way of orchestrating things. And every stage that we go in life, at some point in time, that knowledge, that information, whatever it is you gained, will be useful for your next phase of your development, if you will. So here you ended up, you're studying all of these different ways of thinking and seeing different aspects of the human mind and intellect, and you became a lawyer. Talk to me as to, number one, what type of law did you gravitate to, and how was it when you were there in that space?
So the law school was super interesting. That's very curious people, very driven, very interested. And it's a fascinating subject to learn, because you really learn many topics, right? You're learning family law, criminal law, you learn everything in law school. So actually it was an excellent education. I loved it. And then I had to work in law firms, which I did not enjoy. I have a very specific memory, actually, in one of the first ones that I worked at. So it was all male law firms. So there was about 9 lawyers and maybe 7, legal secretaries, I think they were called at the time. I don't know if the name has changed now. And I remember, and I was the only female kind of in the law side, in the lawyer side.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go for lunch with one of the, legal secretaries, and I was actually scolded and told, you should go to lunch with the lawyers and not with, and I was like, I can't do it. This is not for me. I can't do this. So I didn't last there very long, obviously. And then through whatever circumstances after in my personal life, I ended up coming up with the idea to teach seminars for the next 15 years, and still do. I don't practice law exactly. I teach seminars, teaching people how to, write contracts and whatever. So it's commercial law, but it's in a group, and it's still kind of, it's kind of fun to do. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I have many lawyer friends that from all aspects. My cousin is a commercial lawyer. We have prosecutors, defense attorneys, all of it, So I have a crew back in Orlando that is all lawyers. That's all I hung out with, lawyers, judges, and any of those type folks. So, and I got a chance to see some interesting things that I'm not going to talk about at this podcast, but get to see some really interesting things. So here you are, you vacated, quote unquote, the practicing of law, and you were one of a teacher in a sense, where you are
Yeah.
now beginning to instruct others
You're seeing the
about
pattern,
processes
right?
and so forth.
You're seeing how I ended
And
up
so,
doing these circles, right?
yeah, that's what I tell people. There's nothing that you do that is wasteful.
Yeah.
And I tell them, don't matter what you have done in life, if you are a secretary, if you are a carpenter, it doesn't matter. The principles that one will do as a carpenter or a secretary are all valid in the space that you will end up, that you're called to be, is all necessary. It's a part of your training, if you will. So
Yeah.
don't worry about what you're doing in life saying, I could never do that. And that's why I always say that you can do it because you were trained to do it. So here
Yes.
you are, you're using your skill set as a teacher to instruct all of those folks. As you are doing that, what was happening to you? Where were you and your mind state in life? How you related to yourself? What was that relationship like with you? With you?
I love that question because most people just don't even ask, what relationship do you have with yourself? I mean, just the question in of itself tells me so much about you. I definitely went through a lot, like all those years, so many traumas, so many difficulties, mental, emotional, with relations. And I think all along, no matter how much I was miserable, there was always a little piece of me that was looking to help myself. So I guess my
Mhm.
relationship with myself was always pretty kind, like
Yeah,
caring towards myself to try to be okay. So I think that's, no matter what was going on, I was still keeping that. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's still
What
there.
tools did
Yeah.
you bring in, Sandy? What tools did you bring in to assist you to walk through the pains, the traumas that you were afforded to go through at the time? Um, I have the sayings, and I believe that we go through all of those because you are going to meet people that will that have gone through all of those. And the reason why, that when you sit before them, when you speak, your words will carry, in what we call in the Christian church, in the church realm, they call it the anointing. It's simply the power, the energy, because the words that you release in that conversation, because of your experience, your personal experience, is empowered with juice, if you will, with an energy that when that person sits and hears in this conversation, they know that you are different and that you speak with an authority versus when you were speaking just of, I studied that. So the difference is that the fact that you went through all of that, when you sit with those folks and when you present in all your presentations and so forth, those that are sitting back and are in that space that you're talking about will be ignited, and they will find themselves and come to you to have a conversation. As when you were speaking directly to me because you have just released the energy and it landed into someone that had that need. So that's why you went
That's
through
beautiful.
all of those things. So what tools did you bring in to help you to manage your emotions while you're there? Because those places, the trauma, are always dark places. And what tools did you bring? Was it you were kind to yourself, but what were those tools that you brought in to help you out
Um,
to be kind to yourself?
I don't know if that was a tool or just having a grandmother who looked at you in a certain way, that's
Yeah.
imprinted in you, right? So But for sure, I'm sure I had other tools as well. One of the main ones, at least for big traumas, that I used was just someone who said to me at some point at the right time, listen to your body, follow your body. So that really helped. And from there, I can say that that would be one of the first things I still recommend, even for people that I talk to now. You know, this demonization that we have of emotions is really harmful because our bodies really know what they're doing. And so if we always try to put away our emotions or not recognize them or feel them, this makes us against ourselves instead of feeling our emotions, all of them, including the hardest and biggest ones and the most painful ones. And often traumas will actually require you to feel, you know, very extreme anger also. I'm saying feeling, obviously. I'm not saying doing anything to anyone, but simply feeling, right? And so allowing yourself to feel whatever your body is feeling would definitely be one of the best tools to getting past those feelings. So we need to kind of feel to heal many things.
I agree with you.
That would be one of the main. And what happened with me afterwards is that once I really started trusting my feelings, I realized that feeling is just much bigger than just feeling emotions, because I was always going there, going into my body, going into the truth, whatever it is. I just started feeling everything. That means I feel life. I feel myself. I feel trees. I feel my environment. I'm a living being all the time now because I feel instead of just think, right? Instead of just being in the analytical. Yeah. And it's especially hard, I think, for people who have very high level, I don't want to say intelligence as if that is the intelligence. I'll say like analytical intelligence. There's a million types, but if you're very, you know, kind of smart in that way, right? Whether it's kind of math and law schools and that kind of complex thinking, it's actually, I suspect, I didn't do any studies, but I suspect it's even harder to come into yourself in this way because you've been so praised your whole life about, you know, these achievements and degrees and certificates and whatever else. And so it's very hard to come back to just feeling something that's been looked down upon, basically. Unfortunately, I hope we can stop that nonsense soon. But it's been looked down upon for, 5,000 years or whatever. And to get back into trusting that. And then, of course, we will still use our intellect, but it will be driven from inside and not running our life. It will be our, I guess you can call it the servant instead of, the
ego.
Yeah.
The ego aspect of us, as they say, some of the sages will say to you, is that ego, that the I am, meaning that you're focusing more on yourself, but not in a holistic way. You are having this, that you're higher than, that you're better than, that you're more than someone else.
Yeah.
And so I think when we get away from that, no, go ahead. When we get away from that, that's when you start heading into the servant mindset, is different place.
Yeah, I mean, the way I try to describe it in the circles, and I had an illustrator do it for the book because this is how I kind of saw the situation, is that we literally have like imagine a calculator, like the one with the numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, that our heads are actually a calculator, right? So they calculate. They calculate what's good, what's bad, should I get this, whatever. It's calculating all day. It's comparing. That's what a calculator does. And then in our body and in our heart and in our essence, there's something else, right? We feel ourselves. So the more we start to connect with our body instead of our head, and many people are disconnected from their bodies. I called that in the book. It's barely visible in the Google. I looked it up. I'm like, does that even exist? Or did I invent it? But I called it decorporated. Instead of decapitated, we're decorporated. We don't feel ourselves.
Yeah.
And so when you start feeling yourself, because you're meditating, because you're starting to feel your pain, you're feeling your goodness, you're feeling whatever, you're just feeling, right? The more you get in the body, in the body, in the body, right? Then it starts to kind of grow and take over and challenge, the thoughts that would have come from this calculator, many of them which were kind of put there, right? Because people were telling you things. So now you think them, but it's not that you arrived at them yourself. What we are ourselves is much deeper, this kind of essence, right? So for me, the ego is just this kind of calculator. Any comparing of something, I'm better than someone or worse than someone, that comes from the head. And when we really are in the heart, we just don't feel that. So it's not like we're trying or we're good people. We just don't feel it. I don't feel better or worse than anyone. I don't feel that.
Yeah. It's, to do that is you have to live in the present. You mentioned meditation.
Yeah.
I tell people make meditation into this spiritual thing where you cross your leg and you're on a tree and you're chanting and saying things, but everyone meditates all day long. The human spirit is designed to do that. But how and what we meditate is the choice that we have to make. And because when you're at work, let's say you could be thinking about your bills, you could be thinking about many things outside of work. You are actually meditating. That thought that you have playing on a rotation in your mind, you are actually meditating on it. But when you do the other aspect of meditation, what I call really purposeful meditation, the type of meditation now that you're going to begin to, as you said earlier, begin to slow your thoughts down. You begin to question, you begin to pick the types of thoughts that you are now going to focus on. And during your day, you have all these other thoughts that are coming all the time, and you're jumping from one to another. You got this, you're thinking about the kids, you're thinking about the parents, everybody. And so when you're in a state of meditation, you have to come in touch with your feelings. You have to slow all of that down. You have to stop it, and make a decision as to which one you allow in. Because as one begins to become awake, you will see that the purpose of the thoughts is to create your life. It is going to bring forth fruit. It's what kind of fruit do you want in your life? And so that's when people began to meditate, they began to do yoga, they began to bring in all these things that we call tools to get in touch with the heart of them, the soul of them versus the mind. You're making that switch because to make that switch, you yourself have to surrender to the heart. And that journey is a fun one, to disconnect from the intellect, to then allow the heart to be the governing part of you versus the intellectual to be the governing part of you. So there's this dance that goes back and forth that one must understand within your journey and give room to each in its right place at the right time. And that's the difference in the balance that we have to learn as we're walking through life. Here you are, Sandy, you're learning all of these things. You are in your space as a teacher, and you are learning about yourself. You're going through trauma. You are recognizing that you need to get in touch with your heart, your emotion. As you are doing that, what began to happen to you as you are now disconnecting the intellectual and beginning to walk the road by which now you're going to surrender to this emotional, the heart aspect of you? What was happening in your mind? What was happening with you at that time?
I think at that point, that's a good question. So once there was definitely a bit of a shift, of starting to trust the heart space, and as opposed to, looking for the outside, how to guide my life, So, one piece at a time, I would start to provide internally what, people tend to look for externally. So I was slowly not looking for approval anymore from outside. I was not looking for anyone to, rescue me or anything from outside. I was not looking for love anymore from outside, not looking for, everything was one piece at a time, able to be providing from the inside. And, I just started getting more, it's hard to really define how you intertwine loving yourself, trusting, and courage. Those three together, they make a really nice recipe for how to guide your life, because, slowly but surely, again, getting more and more into this feeling state, then you start to ask yourself, like, what do I feel I should do? And you're not looking to your parents for the answer or your kids. You're just looking like, what do I feel I should do? What do I feel I should do?
Yeah.
And you don't really know necessarily the outcome of it, but it just feels right. And that you start to trust it and to go with it. And then that's just kind of how I operate my life now all the time, even starting these podcasts, which is very new for me. I've never done any social media before. I just feel like I should do it. So it's simply because, should I do this? Yeah. Okay. And that's it. And there isn't all the analysis or planning or, what number of views or who's gonna, like, it's not my business almost. My choices just come from, that feeling state.
Yeah.
And that's it. And letting go of the rest.
Yeah. It's a good way to live one's life. I think I try to explain that journey to people because it is a difficult journey to the individual because of our programming. I know you guys hear Sandy just gliding over that, but that is a painful time because you go back and forth. And she mentioned one of the most powerful things that you have to do to yourself: trust. That is a powerful journey to move from trust, and where you're able to trust yourself because you've been told all your life that you're no good, that you're less than. And so your focus and all you know is that I'm less than. And so then as you begin to reprogram your mind in moving into the space and saying, well, no, I'm more than that. There is this bridge that you have to cross that takes time. It doesn't happen in 1 year. It takes 10, 20 years, longer some cases.
Who knows?
But you must cross that bridge because you are now responsible for your creation. You are moving forward. You are creating your new story. You are now talking to you and not allowing someone else to talk to you. You are talking to yourself. You're encouraging yourself. Exactly. There were times when I tell people, after all your friends are gone and all the noise are no longer there, the voices have been quiet, and I tell them, what are you saying to yourself?
Right.
And it is very important, that conversation that you're having with yourself, because it will dictate, one, how long you stay in that situation that you're currently in. Yeah. Two, it'll dictate you how you came out, how you're going to come out of that. And so by the way you speak to yourself, it will keep you there or it will propel you out. So here you are, Sandy, you're moving through, you're learning all these different principles, you're applying them in your life. You are using these tools to get control of your life. You are seeing that you no longer want love from someone else. You're looking to you. You're learning to trust yourself. And you are beginning to become courageous. So talk to us about this courage aspect of your life, because as you said, courage, self-love, all of those things mingle into your personal journey. Talk to me as you begin to recognize the entrance of courage in your life as you begin to stand up and take those steps.
So there was so many of those. I'm trying to think back to the feeling. I think, well, for me, when you're really investigating, and that's the word I would use, it's like a science, even though we're talking emotions or whatever, for me, it's absolutely scientific to be looking at what's true, right? So I truly feel this, or I'm truly going through this. So I no longer was seeing, my experience as if it's some, touchy-feely theory. It was actually what's true. And so the more I started experiencing things that I felt are true, and now, for example, it's valid that I feel this, or, this is the way I need to do something, or whatever. So things started having, I guess, I didn't feel like it's just like little old me that has like a thought. It really felt like, no, I'm actually witnessing things that are true, and truth is bigger than me. Actually, truth is what's true. So that's actually something that's, I can hold on to, as it's not like me against the world. It's like, no, it's just true. So I was able to find, or feel the power in that. I don't want to say to defend the truth. That's not the right word for it, but to stand for what I believe or what I experience is true, or what's, and so the courage came from, really realizing that even if I'm going to stand alone, so that's a big one for many people, to be able to stand alone. And that I'm willing to do that. I don't care what happens. And so it doesn't mean you'll be alone forever or anything, but this ability to stand alone, like a tree. I would actually try to identify myself as a tree at some point. Just think of a tree, go in the nature and feel the power of trees, and realize our similarity with trees. They are life as well, and we are life, and really see our similarity there, and hold my ground, basically, like a tree holds their ground. And I would start to hold my ground on things. And, that might mean, sometimes losing relations or having some chaos in family or whatever else. But internally, no matter what was starting to happen outside, I was starting to be more at peace inside, even if outside didn't look like it, because I was now following what I felt I should do. And so I was at peace, more and more.
That's that's the piece I tell people, that when you get there, this is how I have simplified my life.
Mm-hmm.
If I begin to think in my past, I will become depressed. If I begin to think about my future, I will walk out of the present and I will be in anxiety. Anxiety of the unknown. But the gift that we all have is the present. Now, the present, people don't understand the power of the present. The present makes you aware of everything if you live there. You talked about earlier being aware of your body. You can only be aware of your body if you're present. If you're in the future, in the back, in the past, depressed, you're going to miss it. You're going to be in your bed all day, or you're going to be worried about you're not going to move. But if you are present, you will feel that, hey, there's a cold, there's something trying to attack my body that I need to take care of, maybe build the immune system or something. But you living in that space of the present, and if you live presently in the present, you're actually creating your future. And so I don't worry anymore about my future if I am living presently in my present, because I know I'm creating my future right here. And so I allow the feeling, I allow the intention of the moment to be the guide. How do I, what's my, all of these decisions that I'm getting, the thoughts, the energies, the feeling, what is this? And I take this, and then I look into my present. I check in, I make my decision, and I tell people decisions will manifest, some of them instantaneously, some of them several days from now, some of them several years from now. But I am creating, and I must know which one of those decisions that are coming to me. And that's the fun part that I love to do. I like to sit down and figure out, where is this going to lead me now? Where is this going to lead me 5 years from now, and stuff like that. So I have fun with
Huh.
those types of living in the present. It's something
Yeah.
we have to do,
Yeah.
Sandy. It's safer
Yeah.
that way. Keep telling people.
Yeah, I hear you. It's not easy for people because, going into the body is extremely
Yep.
painful, right?
Painful.
Going in the body doesn't mean I'm going to feel happy. It means you're going to feel pain,
Yep.
right? Most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't have healthy support systems around us to help us through that pain. So a lot of us have to go through it by ourselves. So
By
that's
ourselves.
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And it would be nicer if there were people around. I think more people could, try to get into their bodies and see their experiences if there was health. So instead we live, in our head because it's safe in a way. It's like an escape from having to live in the present in the body because it's hard. It's hard temporarily. We'll get through the pain, etc. But it's hard to know that, if you haven't gone there yet. And
that's why you went through it.
I did it. Now, I absolutely don't run away from difficult feelings. Like I know now just to always go towards. I don't go away from. I don't avoid, feelings because I've already learned that. But it's not easy. It was terribly hard, all the time. But so
now
if we're
you're
living
going to
in
teach,
our head,
you're going to teach people now, and that's why I wanted to interject. You are going to now. You made the statement there is not that many people doing it, but now here you are. You're one of them that was not in that space. So you are going to be able to teach those that are in need, just like you were in need. How you're going to teach them how to be present, how to experience that emotional and live from there. So you went through it so that you can become and continue to be that teacher.
I suppose that what happens in the circle, I wouldn't even call it teaching exactly. What I find happens is that when you just are present, and you're not yourself avoidant of like if they express something and you don't try to avoid their emotions or avoid things and you're not afraid of things, just that presence already allows other people to, drop into that a little bit more. So I don't know if it's teaching or just being, maybe. My job is to be.
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's, I think that's a beautiful way to teach, though.
Yeah, I suppose.
To be, because not a lot of people, Sandy, know how to be. So when you are being you're teaching them how to be.
When I'm being me, it allows you to be you.
Yeah,
it's really that simple. Right?
And so it's an exchange of energy. It's an exchange of the fact that when you bring in all these people and you bring them present, you have them announce their title that they have obtained, and then you stripped away that, you give them the chance to do that, and then you strip it away. And you said, okay, thank you for all of that, but now I am simply Sandy. And so now you make that statement, you are beginning to teach them to release and be whoever they are. And they're now going to show up, trust your space, trust the fact that you are there to walk with them as they go through. So here you are, Sandy, you're gaining all of these things. You're learning about you. You're understanding the purpose of your pain, as they say. You're learning, applying principles. You're seeing this. At what point did this book come into your space? Did you say, wait a minute, I have something here? What was that thought pattern like? And usually it's a series of things. It's never one thing. If you can remember the series that led you to the book,
Oh, yes, I remember.
And how did you put it there?
I remember because I call them, I'm honest about it, they were my sanity notes. So during difficulties, it was during COVID, I was, there's a great app called Insight Timer where there's just tons and tons of
Yeah.
meditations, but they're not just meditations. It could be sound meditations, talks, like just everything from that world. And I was spending a lot of time on it. And I was just taking notes, like how to make sense, and try to be sane myself. Like I wasn't trying to write a book. I was just trying to find my own sanity. And so then I'm very good actually at organizing, not in terms of organizing a house, but my brain, I think that might be one of my, everyone has different skills, but I am able to organize a lot of material just in general, a lot of complex material to kind of find the connections and organize it well. And so I was just trying to organize, okay, I heard this talk about people pleasing. Okay, what is that? And then I heard about this. And so I would start to make pages of different topics. And then if I would hear something else about it, I would just put it in that page. And, I would just try to make sense of things. And the puzzle was complex. It was not like one thing. Okay, self-love. No, it was like, feeling gravity. What the hell is gravity? And trying to feel what's gravity. What is it grounding? I didn't understand anything. I was going from zero. So just many pieces, on my notes. And then finally they started to have some, making some sense. And, I've done other books before, but like I said, I never cared to put them much out in the world. They were more for me.
Yeah.
But this one, I felt like, no, I'm going to go with this one and share it. I feel I should, and it's time, and that's what I'm doing. See what happens.
I remember mine. Yeah. When you got your copy and you looked at it, talk to me as to how did you breathe? How did you assimilate the fact that you're holding this thing that took you several months and years to put together, and a lot of it speaks directly to you, your growth, your insights, and you see these things, and looking at where you were from page one to where you're at the end of the book. How did it make you feel?
I'm trying to remember when I received them. I mean, it was just what it felt like to me. Well, there was two feelings that I remember. One is like how incredible it is that so much pain, and it was a lot. I'm speaking for myself. I look all smiley now. I was not smiley at all, but how incredible it is that so much pain could become like this thing that I found very beautiful, because I also worked with Illustrator and like there was a lot of, beauty that went into it that wasn't just, from my work and stuff. So like how incredible that can happen. And also there was a big relief on my end, feeling like, oh, I've done what I was like really supposed to do. And now everything I do is a bit extra, but it was something I knew that I must do. Like I just knew I must do this compilation. I'll call it like some compilation of thoughts and feelings and a bit of a system. And I knew that this is something I will be so happy to have my kids have in their hands for their life, because I certainly didn't have that kind of, I'm not saying it's a perfect manual, but it is some kind of manual of how to live in some way that has, I'm sure, some value. And I didn't have any such manual. So I would have loved to have that. And they don't have to follow it, obviously. They can do, I respect their choice and their, how they want to move around in life, wholeheartedly. But at least they will have the information if they choose to, listen to some of it or not. That's really up to them. But I felt relieved from that, actually. Yeah.
I did something similar. All of the book that I put together was information that I learned on my journey that I wanted my children, and I actually wrote it for my children, not for
Mm.
anyone else. I wanted my
Oh.
children to have it. And so I wrote it specifically. They were young
Oh.
boys at the time. And I wrote it at a 12th grade level because I wanted my sons to read it and gain insights. And my hope, I would tell them that my desire is not for you not to go through any pain. My desire for you is that you would be there the exact amount of time that you need to be and then move forward out of it, so that you did not
Mm.
need to be there any longer than you need to. And so
Oh, nice.
I always encourage them to pick. They would come to me and they had a situation. I would say, well, since I'm a computer, let me give you the data. And I would give
Uh-huh.
them the data as to, looking from my vantage point, the data that
Mm-hmm.
I have collected from my years here on the planet and from observation and talking with other people. I would lay the case down and say, then it is your choice, because at the end of the day, if I tell you to do this one and you don't do it, it's still your choice. So you then
Absolutely.
make the decision. And I always say to them, the splendor of any decision is that after you have made it, the only thing remains are the consequences of that decision. And
Mm.
so you get to experience the consequences based on your choice. And that is life. So we cannot blame others. The consequences based on our choice. So here you've written your book, and now you have the courage circle. It is, how did you begin to start shift from the book to the courage circle, where you had people engaging now as you are creating this circle, as you stated? Was that before the book or after the book?
It was right after I finished it. I think what was very hard for me most of my life, as I explained to you earlier, was the quality of the listening that I didn't have, or that I don't think, I don't see in my environment. I'm not talking about only my family. I'm saying I just don't see the quality of listening that I needed in my work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I am lucky enough. I have two very good friends, which we kind of developed and talked and learned how to listen to each other well, because we didn't even do
Yeah.
it well. And they're all kind. So it's not about not being kind. We just haven't experienced it. And so,
Yeah.
I saw the power of that kind of listening, that was occurring between me and my two friends, just the listening. Not
Mm-hmm.
giving advice, not jumping, not this, not everything else. The actual quality of listening that was occurring between us during COVID. And I thought, I'd love to see if I could share that with others and then discuss all the topics that that me and my two friends were discussing with more people, because I guess ultimately I believe that each person that gets well or feels well, right? That feels well at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day. I mean, that's contagious. And so
Yeah.
every person becomes something contagious to the world around them. And
Yeah.
so,
I agree.
so I said, I'll try that. I knew a friend at a yoga studio, and I asked her, I'm going to try to do the circle where we talk about these topics instead of
Mm-hmm.
having no clue about them. And I started, and at first 2 people came, and then the next one 4 people came, and the next one 0 people came. And then I was
Yeah.
like, what do I do? 0 people came, maybe, what am
Yeah.
I've learned now to say, okay, what do I learn from this? Instead of, oh no,
Yeah.
okay, what am I supposed to do with the information that absolutely nobody came, that she
Yeah.
had sent to her mailing list? And then I had to muster up more courage, over and over. And I created a meetup, which was so hard for me. I can't explain how
Yeah.
hard that was for me to do that. It was just hard. And I said, okay,
This
I'm going to,
podcast
what? And
it
this
is hard for
podcast
me
was
to do.
is hard for you to do. It is still?
It was.
It
Yeah.
was.
It
I'm
was.
sure.
It took me when I started this podcast, I did the 10 chapters in the book. So each podcast was a chapter of the book.
Oh, nice.
And so in the beginning, and then I knew it was progressing because I had the vision of interviewing people.
Mhm.
But I am not one. I don't. Uh, yeah. So I got to number 10, and then
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed my brother because it was the easiest thing to do because,
Right.
I didn't have to do anything. So I called my brother up and I said, "Hey, I need to go to the next phase of my podcast and it's interview. So can I interview you?" And so I interviewed him twice so that I could not deal with this, Sandy. So I know exactly what you're talking about. After I interviewed him, I stopped the podcast. My
Right.
podcast at that
Mm-hmm.
time took off. And I guess because a lot of people were home and COVID and stuff like that, it took off. Yeah, there were thousands of downloads. I mean, just crazy when I first did it. So I was looking at this thing just flying. And I got to that point now where I had to come in front and begin to talk and being, having this conversation with people. And I couldn't do it. It took me several months
Mm-hmm.
to walk through that door, to come to the place with myself that says, I need to do this. This is the natural progression of the podcast. You knew this. You have to step out of your comfort zone. And so when you said that, I knew exactly what you're talking about. It can be a very painful place, but the reward is not known until you step out. And so once I step out, it took off, and people come from all over and share some of the most powerful story, like yourself, um, and there are people that are listening to us, Sandy, and all of you guys that are in pain. Um, the people that come on Threads of Enlightenment, we're all in pain, all of us. If I tell you my story and my darkness, it will stun most of you. I try not to talk about it, the pain and where I came from. But
Mm.
I smile a lot. I have a grin on my face 24 hours a day, and people want to always ask me why you always smiling, and I'm like, I am alive. And so I want to let you know that everyone, including Sandy, we are here to help. Um, you that are listening to us, I want you guys to buy her books because the books are there. You're having one on one with your audience, a private time. And the words that she wrote on those pages have the ability to leap off of those pages and leap into you and give you the courage that you need to stand up. The courage maybe is to, I'm going to provide all of Sandy's information. The courage may be that you get in touch with Sandy and you walk into one of these courage circles. Um, it takes courage to make that step. I had to do it. Sandy mentioned she had to do it. Every single person that is interested in their personal development comes to that spot and they have to become courageous to make the other steps. So we welcome you to the courage circle so that you can become courageous in your living, in your awake, in your sleep, in your life. Become courageous by taking the time and spend it with Sandy, reading a book and get in touch with her and talk to her. So here you are, you're doing all these circles. We call it the death of the dream, Sandy, when you have all these people coming and then all of a sudden it dies. And you begin to have this wonderful thing that I was talking to this young lady a few days ago about the imposter syndrome. And we began to question everything about us. what did I do? What the heck went on? What's wrong with me? Did I do it right? What did I mess up? People liked it. What happened? Did I say something? They don't like me. I mean, all of these stuff come and start knocking at your thoughts. Knocking. Let me in. Let me in. We have the choice to let them in, or just what she said. I'm gonna create something else. I'm gonna move it out, And she moved through it, and so that's where the courage comes in. So here you are. You are working with the circle, the courage circles. Sandy, talk to us about someone that came in to the space that you mentioned one to me briefly, that were able to walk through the circle, as they say, and they gained and obtained their courage to move through their dark time and became alive and aware and stepped out of that darkness.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you. It's such an amazing place in this world because I don't know any other place where I feel that way. So it's not about, like, I thought I'm doing it for them, but I do the circles and I just feel like, oh, this is such an amazing place. Like, what, I can't wait till this expands into the world, each person going into their world and taking this into their world. And so, like I said, we start on this attitude of equality to start. The next thing we do is I do some demonstrations about the listening, which is very important. I don't want to get into it now. Maybe we don't have time, but it's a very important part for everyone to understand the expectations in the room of how we listen to each other. So there will not be any demeaning, dismissing, gaslight, all the other whatever type of words, or even fixing, advising. So I really cancel all of those. Cancel culture. We're going to cancel that stuff from the room and really practice healthy listening. And so once that's established, then we start conversation on different topics. And sometimes I'll say, does anyone want to say anything on this topic, that topic? So one time I'll tell you two stories that come to mind. Once we were talking about the ranking system, which I like to talk about, which is that we have this illusion that somehow in our world we're in some kind of ranking system where you get more points if you have a certain degree, you have more points if you're tall, you get points for this. The whole thing makes absolutely no sense, this ranking system. And then I even give the example, okay, so what if you were depressed for 3 years and then you managed to take a shower that day? Do you get a point for that? Or maybe you smiled to a neighbor. Is there a point? This ranking system is nonsense. And in that circle, one guy shared that, he has extreme social anxiety and came to the circle to, try to deal with that, whatever. And we're like, that's unbelievable. Forget degrees. That's huge. Right? And the energy in the room is just so contagious when we hear stories like that. Or there was another woman who said she came because her husband and her father have called her whole life. They call her a chicken, her whole life. And she, I guess was ready to see what she thinks about this label that she's had or whatever. Another person in the group said, oh, that's interesting how you've been called chicken, but you're the first person who spoke up in this group today. And just that energy in the room was just, it's all about this encouraging energy that's built in the room. And she showed up the week after telling us that that week, it was 1 week after, she said that week she had stood up to her boss for the first time in her life. Stood up. I don't know what she did. I'm not saying she caused a scene. Maybe she just said something. Who knows what she did exactly. And so it's all, all different people coming, not necessarily, some are just kind of philosophy curious types, and we talk about ego and topics and all kinds. There's just all kinds of things, but because there is an atmosphere of equality and respect being that we do not try to fix each other or tell each other what to do, basically. And each person is just sharing, but there's respect for that. That in of itself, I think, allows people to take responsibility for their own life and what they need to do, and with just the encouraging energy around, but it really is their their responsibility, and it's felt. It's not words that I say.
Yeah.
It's what's felt in the room, you know. And so,
It's powerful exercise.
who knows what's going on after when people go or come, whatever. But for me, it feels
Yeah.
like the only place in the world that feels sane for me,
Yeah.
because people are
That is
with
awesome.
each other in this
Yeah.
way, and this is what feels very healthy, you know.
Wow. That's awesome. Anyone that's listening to us, I encourage you to get to her circle of courage, or courage circle, and
You have to come to
remember to
Montreal for
buy
that.
her and buy her books so that you can have an audience with her. And if you have friends that are in a situation that you feel that they can utilize the knowledge that you had, buy it and offer it as a present to them. Sandy, I want to thank you for coming so much to Birds of Enlightenment. Thank you.
I really appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome.